All right, great. Again, my name is Marilyn, and Jim teaches this big book study every week. And I have been going to his big book studies and learning from him. So I think that's why he chose me. He can't be in two places at one time. He is in Chicago on a business trip. And if you'd say a special prayer for him yesterday, he was pretty sick at the Stairways group when he taught the sponsorship workshop. He wouldn't admit it, though. He said, I never get a cold, something like that. So if you would pray for him that he recovers for tomorrow, that all goes well. Because if all goes well, he won't have to go to Chicago anymore, and he'll be here every week. So, very good. First, we're going to start with the continuation of the 8th and 9th step. As Jim left it last week, he had just talked about the first of 5 parts of the 9th step, which was to make amends to the man that we hated. And that's where he left off. So we're going to continue starting with where we owe money. And
what page is that?
We're going to start on page 78. But first of all, I'd like to do a little backtracking. And the eighth and 8th step is actually made back when you're doing your 4th step. Turn to page 67. The second full paragraph, the last sentence. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. That is preparing for the 8th step. Also turn to page 69. The paragraph starts with referring to our list again, and it's the last sentence of that paragraph. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. Second and last. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. If you turn to the actual reading of the step on page 59, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. That is the step that we're talking about today. So that's something that we have to be careful about doing. The purpose of doing this step is to remove the guilt that we have. There are blockages that keep us from God. There are our character defects, our insanities, and our guilts that block us from God. We have just done the work of the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th step, which remove our character defects and our insanities. Now we have to get to the work that it takes to remove the guilts, which is step 8 and 9. All these blockages have to be removed for us to be able to connect with God. See, God is always there full strength 100%. But we have blockages that have to be removed through our work of the steps. God has given us a way to connect with Him, and that is by doing the steps we can remove those blockages and we can become close to Him then. Now, there's a lot of different things that come into play when it comes to doing this step. A big one is willingness. Again, willingness was important last time I was here when we were talking about the 7th step, and it sure is important in this step. You're going to find a lot of people are not willing to do this. If they are not willing, it's probably because they have fear of consequences. Fear of consequences of the shame of criminal things that might happen to them, of money owed. But we have to pray for the willingness until it comes, and that's on page 76. 3rd paragraph, near the end. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Now, this implies that it will come if we ask. That willingness is a gift, that we have to ask until it comes, hence it will come. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. Now, it's interesting in that first sentence that I read, the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves, that is referring back to page 60, where the big book describes this very specifically. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, the rest of the players. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. What usually happens, next paragraph? The show doesn't come off very well. He decides to exert himself more. Still, the play does not suit him. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is his trouble? So this is where all this started. We tried to run the show ourselves. We caused a lot of problems. Page 62. Driven by 100 forms, first paragraph, of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later put us in a position to be heard. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. All right, so this is where in other words, we started all these amends that we have to make. We caused them all in the first place, and that's why we have to go back and repair the damage. Now, the line on page 76, we have to repair the damage. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage. That's what we're doing with this step. We're repairing. We're not making apologies for the approval of the other person. We're not making apologies for their forgiveness. We are attempting to repair the damage. Their reactions will be varied, and actually is not important in this step, their reactions. We're not doing it for their reactions. We're doing it to remove our guilts. So we repair the damage in like. And it's especially in like where we're going to start when it talks about the money. We took money, we give back money. It's pretty simple as far as that goes. Now, to help you, the actual step is between page 76 and 84. So it's helpful when you're starting your 9th step to read the whole thing, to jog whatever hasn't been already on your list in the 4th step. When you see what your purpose of this step is, to repair damage, maybe more things that you did not put in your 4th step will come to your mind. So it's important to write it down. Now, amends takes time. In fact, amends could take for the rest of your life, and should take for the rest of your life. Turn to page 83. The first sentence, yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. Down to the last sentence. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. Each morning, long period, each morning. The next sentence, the spiritual life is not a theory, we have to live it. And into the middle of that paragraph, they will change in time. In other words, we are living it. This is something that we do daily, each morning, and they will change in time. It's important to know that it's going to take a long time, because we have to know that we have to move on from starting this step into our other steps. If we waited for all the repairs to be made, on everything for the rest of our life. This step would take us the rest of our life. We would never get to the 10th and 11th and 12th step, and so then we wouldn't have those steps to recover. So it's important that as you start this step, you also continue on knowing that you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life, so you might as well move on to the 10th step while you're doing it. And this is proven on page 84, second paragraph. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living as we cleaned up the past. Hi, Doc. It's extremely important that the big book be read very slowly because there's little words like as we cleaned up the past. So in other words, we're starting the 10th step as we're cleaning up the past. The 9th step is cleaning up the past. We're pretty much doing them at the same time. And it's important to do that because you have to write any new mistakes that come along in step 10. You have to grow closer to God in step 11. And you have to give it away to keep it step 12. So that's why you have to get on with the rest of the steps as you're doing your 9th step. So, and once again, I was here a couple of weeks ago, and I talked about how all the steps all point to the 12th step, and that is the purpose of us doing the steps, and that is our mission. And if you turn to page 77, this comes into play vividly with this 9th step. At the moment, we are trying to put our lives in order, but this is not an end in itself. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. This is our purpose. So this is why we're clearing away our guilts so that we can be of maximum service to God and to others. Not for their forgiveness, but to make us a better tool to help others. And there are 5 different categories of amends that the big book states. The first one is the one that Jim went over last week. Persons we used to hate. It says used to hate because if we have done our 4th step correctly, all of our resentments have been removed. Bill said that if you have any resentments left after you've done your 4th step, you haven't done it right. So this should be persons we used to hate. We don't hate them anymore. Used to because we've gone through the spiritual remedy for our resentment. We've prayed for them, for the good for them. We're willing to forgive their actions. Only God can remove the resentments, but we are willing to forgive their actions. God is the only one that can actually forgive them too, but we are willing to forgive their actions. They are usually relationships that went sour. We don't usually hate people unless we loved them at one point and then they threatened us in some way. So these people are going to be close to us, persons we used to hate. And once again, the truth is that the troubles are of our own making. We just read that back after how it works. If we have not let go of these resentments, we have to pray for the willingness until it comes. Page 76 again. And if you're balking at doing these resentments, at doing these amends, chances are you still have some resentments. So go ahead and pray for the willingness until it comes. Go back to your 4th step and pray for forgiveness, for you to forgive their actions. Also, there's a prayer on page 552 that if you still... Now this might be on a different page for you. If you have a resentment you want to be free of, if you will pray for the person or the thing you resent, you will be free. If you ask in prayer for everything you want for yourself to be given them, you will be free. Ask for their health, their prosperity, their happiness, and you will be free. So the big book gives us a couple ways to get rid of these resentments. It has to be done to remove our guilt so that we can make amends. Now there are some certain rules that there are in these 9 steps, some basic rules. One is written right in the step that we are not permitted to do anything to harm that person or another person. It's written right in the step. Right? Except when to do so would injure them or others. We are not allowed to harm anyone or any other person by doing this step. Another rule, we are not permitted to make them wrong or criticize them. Turn to page 77. The last partial paragraph. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. We are there to sweep off our side of the street. Next page. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If you go to somebody to make them wrong and you don't have permission, it makes you wrong. You can't justify trying to tell somebody they're wrong because you're going to help them, quote unquote. If they're not willing to hear what you have to say, you are not helping them, you're alienating them. Turn to page 90. The last paragraph, the last partial paragraph. If he does not want to see you, never force yourself upon him. If you force yourself upon people, they are just going to get angry with you. They're going to put up blocks. And at the top of page 90, you may spoil a later opportunity. Perhaps in the future, this person may come to you for advice. If you go to them with unsolicited advice, that will never happen. So in other words, set your own self straight. Don't be looking to help others by criticizing them. Remember, the whole purpose of this is to remove our guilt, not to set right the things that they have done wrong, but to set right the things that we have done wrong. Also, another rule is we're not permitted to make others relive the past. If they want to discuss this further, fine, but be careful not to harm them. In other words, you don't want to make your amends bringing up things to make it worse. You want to make your amends as brief as possible, knowing that since it's going to take your whole life to fully see these through, your actions will speak louder than your words with these steps. So you don't want to bring up the past. You don't want to make it like it's a movie, like it was something pleasant, because obviously it was not. We just want to get to the solutions at this point. And another rule is you are not allowed to let that person harm you. And that's on page 83. Third paragraph. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. Now, this does not give us to harm them. This is not tough love. This is just the fact that except when to do so would injure them or others, we don't want ourselves harmed in this point either. This is not the purpose of this. This is to set right wrongs, not to beat us, or this is not to torture us. This is just to actually make restitution for the wrongs that we have done. Now, at times we're going to be blocked from being able to make amends. People will be dead, or we can't find people. And in such cases, the willingness alone will be sufficient. This is proved on page 83. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would write them if we could. And also on page 76, the willingness comes into play here. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Last week we talked a little bit in this group about fear of conflict. Or
Right.
confrontation.
Correct.
And so I was listening to you, keeping it simple and basic, which is keep it as simple as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Am I to go into this, and this particular person is an untreated alcoholic, am I to go, who may be threatened, I don't even know, it's not my job, but am I to go into this saying, okay, please don't talk, just listen to me, or, because there's no doubt that there's going to be, she's right, I'm wrong, and I'm going to get, I'm going to get engaged, I'm going to kind of get hooked, I think, because there is going to be kind of a blaming thing going on. Is it practical to say, can I just say my piece and go, or maybe put it in writing, or so that I could maybe eliminate some of the fear?
Mm-hmm. It is always important to put things in writing.
Write it down and read it?
Sure, absolutely. And to go over it with your sponsor of what you're going to say to the person, that's really important too. It's also important to put the fear down on paper and ask God to remove that fear. The spiritual solution to fear is fear written down, discussed with another person, found out the root of what that fear is. What is that fear? Is that fear affecting my social instinct? Which instinct is it affecting? Please God to remove this, to go into it. If you have that fear, then ask for the fear to be removed as part before you go and make the amends. You never know how the other person's going to react. It really won't matter, and most of the time you're really surprised what you think they're going to say they don't really say. But however, the important thing is for you to get your work done. You're removing the guilt. If they're attacking you, you do want them to stop. You do want to say some form of a stop. My purpose is not for me to come here to be abused. My purpose is to come and help you. How can I be helpful to you? Go back to your purpose. How can I be helpful to you? How can I repair these wrongs? But it's the fears like that keep us from wanting to do this step. Absolutely. It's extremely important that we do it anyway. Surely that's what keeps us from wanting to do any of this stuff. Just ask God. Yes?
Doing the ninth step is certainly something that I have had to undertake. And I remember that when I was new and I was trying to work the ninth step at the suggestion of my sponsor, because just as you said, I think it's very important not to do anything without talking it through with the sponsor that you have gone ahead and taken the fifth step with, who kind of knows a little bit about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Because fear is a tough thing. And if you're new in the program and haven't had a chance to really, for me anyway, it's the way it was, hadn't had a chance to really work on my insides enough to get close enough to God to understand that everything is going to work out just the way it's supposed to, and rid myself of some of those fears that were with me for all of my life. Then stepping into the lion's den, as much as I want to do it, truthfully, I wasn't ready to do some of those biggies. Hurting myself or others was me. I was told that that's me too, that I am one of those others, and that I have to be willing to make amends. But certainly with certain people in my life, in early sobriety, I wasn't ready to make those amends yet. It wasn't that I wasn't willing, but I had some of those fears that I hear this young lady talking about, and it takes a while to walk through whatever it was that I needed to walk through to understand that I would feel better if I jumped into that lion's den, but it's okay if I wasn't ready in the beginning, as long as I knew eventually that I would. And I think that a good sponsor, probably would suggest the same thing, because not knowing what someone else's reaction is. I know my relationships with some of the people in my life were threatening to myself and to them. I mean, I didn't pick great people to be around. So going in and expecting them all of a sudden to act normal because I decided it was time for me to make amends. Well, that's a scary thought because it's really nice to think, well, I'm going to make amends and everything's going to be cool, but we don't know what the response of the other person is going to be. And sometimes it's not the response that we want, and that doesn't matter. But if it's going to take off and go in a different direction where there may be other harm caused, that's one of those times that I think the sponsor can direct us and say, maybe we better wait on that one until you get a little healthier. So jumping right into all these amends, at least for me, it's a very slow process. And I mean, I can look back now and I can see why. If I had done some of the amends early on out, I mean, I just don't know where I would be today. So I'm very grateful that I did take my time. So that's the only thing that I'm suggesting. Is I think that my brain thinking I want to do it right now because I want to feel better, sometimes my brain, most of the time, is that sick brain that kept me out there. So I've got to kind of depend on somebody else's brain who may be a little healthier. Because I've said it before. I've said it to my sponsor, you know. When I make a decision to do something, the safest thing for me to do is just the opposite. Because given my past, I still don't have a real good thinker. And running it by somebody else who knows me usually solves that.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Keep in mind that this step is the 9th step. It should be based on the fact that we have just successfully completed our 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th steps. Turning to page 68 in the 4th step, it talks about fear and the spiritual solution to fear. 68, we reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper. We asked ourselves why we had them. So we put them on paper, ask where the root of that is. And then we ask God to remove them. We are, next paragraph, we're on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. So in other words, fears are going to crop up, even though we ask God to remove them, but we already have this to take away the fear before we go into doing the step. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. And then that's in the 4th step. We're already commencing to outgrow fear. Then in the 5th step, page 73, first partial paragraph, the last sentence is, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary. What's necessary? Necessary to do the rest of the steps until we told someone else all our life story. So conversely, if we do tell someone else all our life story, our sponsor who's going to work us through the fears of this step too, we will learn enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty. So if this fear does crop up as you're doing the 9th step, you have the tools from doing the other steps properly to go back and ask God to remove that fear to go into it. Because their reaction is really not important. Your reaction is. The fact that they don't hurt you is important to you, and you can get them to stop. However, the fear has to be removed before you go into it. Absolutely. Now, remember, you're not doing these steps until you get to this step.
Well, this is really a 10th step, actually. It's something that's like been accumulative in sobriety.
Oh, okay.
It's something I haven't been keeping up with.
Ah.
One of those things.
Okay, good. Yeah, because definitely people shouldn't come in from step 1 and say 1-9 step. If
what
that.
You're saying, especially what you said about speaking to somebody about the fear and where it comes from, and just sitting here and thinking of that, that's really great.
Good. Yes.
On a practical level, you may not be afraid to go into it, But it is a good idea, and I think this lady was alluding to the same thing, is that, you may go in and make it amends. Let's take a family member. It could be a mother, father, sister, brother. Maybe you're estranged from that person, and you don't know. You may go in, and they may tell you, go away and never come back again. You could be, not want to say shattered, but you could be very emotionally hurt from something like that. That's a powerful thing. And your motive is good. You come in, you don't know. I mean, your conscience may be clean, but you're a human being. You have emotions. You're not going to get past that. So it's a good idea in making this, as has been said. You're going to discuss this with your sponsor, but you have some emotional support. Maybe they know you're going to go into this kind of situation, and it comes out not so good. But you go back, and maybe you have somebody you can talk to. You don't want to, God will help you. He'll help you through that. But we're humans with emotions, and it's important to have that support. That's part of what the fellowship is. So that's just a practical thing.
Right, another good idea to go over everything you're going to do with your sponsor.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Tom?
Remember, where is it said that when we go to these people, we're on a different footing, on different ground?
Yeah.
'Cause I know when I first got sober, I did the first step and then went directly to the ninth step. And I was the same drunk saying I'm sorry again. And I hadn't grown any, and I wasn't on any different footing, or I don't remember how to put it in the big book.
Right. Well, on page 83, the spiritual life is a theory. We have to live it. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. They're going to be... Some people are not going to believe you. You've said it before, that type of thing. But our purpose is still to do it. And then to live it for the rest of our lives. That's why some of these things, of course, they're going to react like that.
But that doesn't matter, because we're
No.
to clear our conscience. They can still be pissed off at us, like I'm sure
Right.
some of mine were. Some
Right.
of my friends I made.
And then your job is to continue to live it for the rest of your life. And then maybe someday you'll get the right reaction. Yes?
Yeah, but in the ninth step it says here, made direct amends to such people where possible, except when to do so would injure them or others.
Okay.
Now, you might injure them by bringing painful things to, some best amends some people can do for people is not to be in their life anymore. We would want to clear away the wreckage of our past, but we can't clear it away at the expense of other people's feelings, too. I mean, if you know you're walking into a situation to make amends, and it's going to make this other person very unhappy, cause pain to them, we're not supposed to do that.
Absolutely. Sure. But
we're not here to make their life miserable.
No.
To clear our own.
absolutely.
So we got to be very, we're on a self-righteous mission here, but we got to, if I'm going to go, the best thing I'd say a person you had an affair with, or in the past he acted badly towards, the best thing for you sometimes is not be back in their life.
Right. Well, we're going to talk about that. Definitely, you don't want to bring old affairs back in.
Or whatever.
Right.
It depends on the situation. And
Right.
sometimes a letter might be better, right? It depends.
We're going to talk about that too. Right. Okay. We haven't really gotten into that. Yes.
Hi, I'd just like to say something from my own experience. The one person on my list, that fear and resentment did not go away. I prayed every day. I prayed every day to have it lifted, have it lifted, have it lifted. And I was very seriously working on my steps with my sponsor. So my sponsor knew that I was frozen. Absolutely. And I wanted to go ahead with my steps, but I couldn't go any further. I was absolutely frozen. So she sat down with me and helped me to write a letter, as George said, so that I could take action without actually going to the person, hurting them or others, and one of the others would have been me. And we sat down, and I wrote the letter, and I sent the letter. Now, did that take away all the fear and resentment? No. I prayed 5 years, every single day, to have that, the fear was gone, to have that resentment removed. And it was finally removed. But there are some things, some people in our lives that have caused so much harm and so much damage that even the thought of them creates an inner emotional reaction, and we have to keep working on it, which is so, that's what I did. I continued to pray, and I continued to do the steps. But every day I had to say that prayer, that person would be resentment wasn't gone for a long, long time. And I'll tell you, even today, and this was, I've been sober 21 years, once in a while, the thought of one of the things that that person did will hit me like a sock in the stomach, and I have to again pray and say, that was a very sick person, that was a very unhappy person, that was a person who did not know how to live, and pray again that God will bless that person with all the things that I wish to have for myself and peace. But it just doesn't plain end, like it's not like a miracle. That's the goal. That's the ideal. The ideal for which we strive. We don't always hit the ideal. Sometimes what we have to do with the help of our sponsors and our meetings is the best we can, and keep doing the best we can until those things come to inner peace. Thanks.
I think that the willingness prayer is the most important one for a case like that. We pray for the willingness until it comes. And we will have the guilt removed, just the fact that we're praying for the willingness alone, even if it hadn't come yet. We will see results. Okay, there's five, like I said, 5 parts to this. The first one is the person we used to hate. Those were some basic theories. Also, owing money is number 2, the second part. The third part is criminal offenses we have made. The fourth part is the affairs that we've had, infidelity, and the fifth part is the family. Page 78, second full paragraph. Most alcoholics owe money. We do not dodge our creditors. Tell them what we are trying to do. We make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause financial harm. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we are sorry. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go, for we are liable to drink if we are afraid to face them. So that sounds like it's pretty important to do this. Remember that when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out physically and mentally. So in other words, we're doing this for spiritual growth. We will straighten out physically, includes the financial. So in other words, we have to make amends financially, whether we think that, well, I owe that person, sure, I stole $100 from that person, but they have a lot of money, and I sure need it more than them. It's not about the money. It's about getting rid of our guilt. And so we have to make financial amends. Now, so we repay the money we owe, and sometimes this may seem impossible. And the question is not if it's possible, but are you willing to make steps in that direction? So you want to make steps that you can actually make. This is a good time to, it says here about the best deal we can, arranging the best deal we can. In other words, if you owe somebody $10,000 and you don't have $10,000, then you can't very well give them $10,000 right now. However, you can make a commitment to giving that person $10 a week. And that's the important part, is the willingness and the action. It's the demonstration that removes the guilt. Now, in actuality, many of your debtors are going to tell you that they don't want the money. You go to your mom, you owe her $10,000, and mom says, "Oh, honey, I'm just so glad that you're sober, forget about it." Well, you're not doing, although that sounds pleasant, you cannot let yourself off the hook at that point, because you're doing this for your own sake, to remove your own guilt. And although sounds like mom's terms are going to be very good, it's very important to give her, $10 a week or whatever, so that you are making steps to that solution. Now, in some cases, they go, I absolutely do not want the money. Don't you dare give me the money. Well, you're still not off the hook. Take that money then and give $10 a week to a charity or something like that would be beneficial. You can't walk away from personal debt. For we are liable to drink. So in other words, you're doing this as to keep you from drinking. So don't say, oh, okay, you don't think I owe you money, well, then I won't pay you. No. You want to do everything you can to assure your sobriety. So you don't dodge any debts, and the sooner you acknowledge your debt, even if no funds are available, look, I know I owe you money. As soon as I can, I'm going to start giving you money, and keep that uppermost in your mind, and then agree to do that. There's commercial debts that will sometimes be written off as part of the business. So in a case like that, it's not necessary to repay to that particular, but once again, a payment in kind is important. In other words, I have one sponsee, she said that she used to steal, whenever she'd go out to dinner with her mother, she used to steal the tips off the table. So now what she's doing is she's giving, when she's at a restaurant and she's giving a tip, you know how you go, I don't know if I should give them $3 or $4? She gives them $4. In other words, you can't really pay back that waitress that you stole money from. However, you need to repay. Yes?
I don't remember who it was, but I just wanted to ask you about, somebody had said, and I thought it was Jim, but maybe it wasn't, in the ninth step where it said would injure them or others, they implied that like we were the others. Because who would
would injure them or others.
And the person, I can't remember who it was.
The affair of the man that you had the affair with, his wife would be another, if you made an improper amend.
Oh, so we are not the others.
Others is pretty much others, but you can't let people hurt you either. But you can't not do an amend with that fear of that they're going to hurt you, because their reactions might not be pleasant. That is not necessarily a hurt to you. Now, you can't allow them to abuse you, but a bad reaction is sometimes understandable. Remember, you're going to God with each and every one of these. You're going to God. Ask each morning in meditation that the Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. On page 83. So each one of these, you're going to go with that shield starting,
Marilyn.
Yes.
I know she's talking about, if I got to go to jail for some crime or for something I'm making amends for, I'd be harming my family because I wouldn't be able to support them.
That's the next one, right?
Is that what they're maybe talking about?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that right now. Maybe let's talk about that, and if you still have a question, we'll go back to it. Let's talk about that, the criminal offenses. The criminal offenses are the next paragraph. Each of these, this one just has one, the owe money only has one paragraph here, yet it is so important. And I think it's very easy. You owe money, you pay money. That one is, and you got to pay money. You can't get out of it no matter what they say. Pay the money to somebody else. It's important that you pay some type of money to someone for the money that you took. Now, or you will drink. So they only have one paragraph, but it's got a kicker at the end there if you don't do it. Now, the next paragraph of page 78. Perhaps we have committed a criminal offense which might land us in jail if we're known to the authorities. We may be short in our accounts and unable to make good. We have already admitted this is in confidence to another person in our fifth step, but we are sure we would be in prison or lose our job if it were known. Maybe it's only a petty offense, such as padding the expense account. Most of us have done that sort of thing. Maybe we are divorced, have remarried, but haven't kept up with alimony. She is indignant about it and has a warrant out for arrest. That's a common form of trouble, too. Although these reparations make innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding, reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience. We ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. That's got a lot of meat in that one. Reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience, we ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing. We have to be. We must not shrink at anything. Now, getting on to what Tom was talking about. Usually, however, other people are involved. Therefore, we need not be the hasty or foolish martyr who would needlessly sacrifice others to save himself from the alcoholic pit. Okay, and they talk about this. A man had remarried because of his resentment and drinking. He had not paid alimony. She was furious. She got ordered for his arrest. It would have been impressive to go up to the judge and say, "Here I am." We thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary, but if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for the family. We suggested, in a case like this, where making an amend might harm somebody else, that you write it down, ask forgiveness, send a small amount of money, start to make restitution, and you would be perfectly willing to go to jail. Of course, she did not. Okay, and then it gets to the next paragraph, top of page 80. This is really important. Before, so they should have said it before, taking such drastic action, we might implicate other people. We secure their consent. In other words, go to other people, say, "This is what I'm going to do. You know, it might throw me in jail. Do I have your permission? Because it might harm you." If they say no, then try to make an amend in some other way. But you don't have the right to harm your family members by cleaning up your own side of the street. Okay? If we have obtained permission, have consulted with others, asked God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must not shrink. If they all say no, well, that's what you got to do. Okay. The bottom line is, if you are willing and you are keeping uppermost in your mind that you don't want to harm anyone, so you go to the people that could be harmed by the amendment that you make and ask their consent. Sometimes this is very complicated. Now, again, with that financial, I'm going to backtrack for just a second. Once again, if you owe $10,000, you can only pay $10 a month. That $10 a month will free you from the guilt. But remember, page 64, you cannot let your financial security be uppermost in your mind. You have to let your spiritual malady. In other words, if you got an extra $10, it's like, well, I give them $10, but I'd rather use that for movies or my own pleasure. You need to use it to make your amends. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically, also financial. So in other words, you're not trying to make your sponsees or whatever comfortable with their own money. You're trying to make them comfortable spiritually. The financial will always follow spiritual recovery. So this is a very important step to make. The rule is, if we don't make these amends, we drink, because the guilts don't go away. So it's very important that we look at every guilt, and I think it's extremely important that we realize our ability to rationalize, because I think you could rationalize every single amendment away if you really tried to. Well, if I did that, they could hurt me, or I could hurt, or they might start yelling at me, and the person next to me is going to get hurt because their ears are going to, you can rationalize anything away. So you got to be very careful here, not to be thinking of self-pity. You might even want to go to your 11th step, looking at the day ahead. On awakening, let us consider the day ahead. The day ahead might be making amends. We ask God to direct our thinking, especially ask to be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. So before you make the amends or think that you're rationalizing in a way that it's going to hurt somebody else, make sure that that thought is divorced from self-seeking, dishonest, or self-seeking amends, that you're just not rationalizing every single amends you want to make into that it's going to hurt somebody else, because there are amends we need to make.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Listen, you're gonna have to sit down with your sponsor and look at every single case.
Exactly.
Because even if making an amend would mean even hurting yourself to the point where you couldn't be a productive member of society anymore, like if you were incarcerated. I mean, it really doesn't it depend? When I'm thinking to myself, not to rationalize it away, but doesn't it matter what you did also? I mean, if you did some white-collar petty crimes or something, and you're going to go to jail, not be able to make a living, have to be supported by the public, I mean, how is that going to benefit anybody? I mean, I don't know.
Everything should go through your sponsor, absolutely. But at the same time,
if you murdered somebody, you probably deserve to go to jail, for a while.
Would they deserve to go to jail when the children would be effective like that when it was so long ago? And anyway, where the relief for this person came was not so much going to jail, because that has happened as of now, was the willingness to admit that really, up to that point, this person was looking at that as something. So they rationalized that away. So until that person really did look at it for what it was and saw that the punishment for murder would be going to jail, and then after you actually looked at it like, yes, I could go to jail, but I don't want to do that to my children, but I would if I had to. I am willing to do that if I had to. Until they came to that exact term in their head, there was no relief of guilt, and they didn't really look at that as the crime that it was until they were actually able to say, yes, I am willing to go to jail if I had to. That definitely did have to be worked out and thought of everybody, but until you look at it for what it is, you can't rationalize it away and saying, wow, that person was just a drug dealer or something, they were scum of the earth. It's like they were a person.
I mean, the willingness that makes you really get in touch with the feelings, just being honest about the situation for the first time in your life, and not covering it up by drinking even more or whatever.
Absolutely.
And that's got to be that's probably the spirituality behind the step and stuff like that.
The willingness to make whatever it takes to set right. We must not shrink at anything. That has to be there 100%, that you would make that amend if you had to. If all those other people weren't involved in it, if it could actually help something, I would do it. It actually has to be actuated for your guilt to go away. Absolutely. Yes?
I'm just curious, was a crime so terrible as murder? It just seems like to me, no matter when it happened, and no matter why it happened, that person that committed that crime should pay. That's such a terrible thing.
Well,
I mean, do you know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, our job is not to judge other people in this, and every situation has to be taken to, and when you get to that step, it'll be your own stuff that you're looking at. But when you're working with other people and they have that, you need to, it does have to be taken for what it was, and they have to be willing to make whatever restitution can be made at that point in order to resolve the guilt. But as
you don't judge, I'm not that far along, and I'm new in the program.
Yeah.
So you don't judge at all the seriousness of any crime.
Oh, definitely. You judge the seriousness of every crime and look at it for what it is, and that you will make amends for that particular crime, each crime. Absolutely. There's a lot of things behind if a person, it says here, before taking such drastic action which might implicate other people, we concern. There were other people involved here. Now you're implicating all these other people too and stuff. So in other words, it's a complicated situation, and each situation is looked honestly. But when you to yourself say you would make the amends if you could, in kind, then the guilt will be removed. Okay. So anyway, I don't know if that answered your question, but it's kind of hard to go through every single situation. We must not shrink at anything, though. You're absolutely right. And yes.
You get into hypothetical situations. In a case of a murder, there's a million ways, variables. That could be somebody that was trying to kill you, or there's a million ways you could look at that. Then you get into, okay, most of us, I'm an alcoholic, but I use drugs too. Am I going to go turn myself in because I use drugs, yes, and say to the police, look, I don't now, but I use drugs. Or I have sped in my car. I confess to you, my brothers. I'm guilty of speeding. I try not to do it, but am I going to go to the police and say, I've speeded. I went 100 miles an hour on the highway and it was wrong. I know that it's wrong to do it, and I'm taking somebody's life, and I would try not to do it. But for the past that I've done it, I'm not going to go to the police and do that. I'm not going to go tell them. I was going 100 miles an hour, and when I had a blackout, and when I came out of it, I don't know what I was doing. So I think there's a spirit of a sound mind that you have to look at each case and discuss it with your sponsor. Murder is a serious thing. That's going to be a rare thing, though. Probably in our lives, it's going to be rare that you're going to find something that happen. Mm-hmm. It happens. Mm-hmm. You talk to some tough guys, that happens. I have known it, people who have done it, where it's happened. And those are serious things. Those are very serious issues. But a final thing I would say is that if it's a sponsor-sponsee relationship, they come to you and they say, all right, I did commit a murder. It's an obligation for you. That's a confidence. You cannot go and say, okay, I'm going to bring you a big book in jail now. I'm going to turn you in. So there's that element of confidentiality. It's the person themselves that has to come to that. And typically, if they're in the program they're working with, they do want to be right with God and themselves, and they're trying to make it right and trying to figure it out. It's not always very simple.
Right. It's not always very simple.
That's the motive. I want to make it right.
Right. On page 80. No, that's right. Third paragraph. What right had he to involve those dependent on him? So in a case like that with, children, you're to make yourself feel better. In other words, there's a lot of complications to this, and that's why each thing has to be gone over with your sponsor and what kind of amends you're going to make for that particular crime. Yes.
I'm grateful to coming up.
Hi.
And I think you are right. We're discussing maybe an extreme situation where in reality, I think that there are the more, I wouldn't say minute, or that each circumstance does warrant something that is individual, and to me it's something that I think you really do have to have a sponsor's expertise for. But I think that the thing that you need more than anything, if you look at that chapter, how many times they use the word courage,
Mm-hmm.
and you ask God to give you the courage. I know willingness is one thing, but if you don't have the guts to do it, and I think it is contingent on your spiritual, bank, how much, faith and courage, faith you have in God, that God will protect you and lead you down the right path to say the right things. Then I think it's all just kind of a moot point. Like I know Jim said, like last week we were talking about fear of the confrontation. He said, well, you just got to go chew the cabbage, get the cow and, put him in the corner and chew the cabbage for 3 minutes. But there are still circumstances in my life that I think that because of my upbringing, because of whatever tapes that are still playing, there is a lot of that fear that permeates. And I'm just coming to that conclusion now that willingness is one thing, but I think you've really got to have that courage. after maybe discussing something on an individual basis. Because I know, like, we're talking about murder and all of these extreme cases, but there's a lot of things that are maybe a little more minute that are still essential. Yeah, in every scenario you have to look at and really. I think timing is also an important thing. That's why I think that step is the 9th step. Because I think Ms. Carroll made one other good point too, that sometimes you may not just be ready to make that resolution, to that person.
Admitting and then being willing will take away the guilt. The action is not necessarily going to come at that time, but admitting and being willing needs to come right away in order for the guilt to be removed. That's where the guilt is removed. Yes.
Just a brief thought. The big book specifically is talking about the 5th step up through the 11th step, and it takes about 16 and a half pages to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about it in other places, but primarily, and about half of that is on this 9th step. That's a very, we're going around on these things here. This is a very powerful step that is a lifetime work, that is already said. It's not a simple thing. There are many guidelines and principles that will help us, but it's not a simple thing. This is why, half of it is talking about that, right, just in this place. Not that it's, a lot of the other steps, they tell us, in a way it's simple but hard to do, but this is a little more complex.
It's extremely...
That's why the time is put there.
It's extremely complex. We have to be willing to pay whatever price for whatever crime. That we cannot shrink at anything, but we can't let others be harmed by relieving our own guilt at the same time. So,
I just wanted to really thank you because this meeting today has been, for me, the best information on the 9th step that I've gotten, and I've gone through a number of steps. I think it's because you followed the big book.
Let's give a round of applause.
hey! Thank you. Well, it's a big book study, so hey, hello. Yes.
Yeah, and action is the name of the game, too, for me, doing the steps. Like you said, the willingness. Every amends I've made from 9 step, there was a sense of apprehension there. If I sat back and rationalized my fear, you mentioned courage.
Exactly.
You suck it up and you go on. It's hard to, that's what keeps me straight by doing the other steps, the 10th, 11th, 12th, the spot checks. I don't like making amends to people.
Right.
Telling people what a jerk I've been.
Right.
It's not easy. It's just not, my nature to admit a lot of the wrongs I've done. I got to suck it up and move on,
Right.
Fear, I've made the amends with fear in me. I can't say I was happy when I was doing it. I was tense and apprehensive doing this thing.
Right.
I can't wait till fear's gone to take action. I have to walk through some of it. And action, to me, that's what got me in everyone's AA. It's an action program. The things work out. And it did work out good, Like you said, you anticipate a bad outcome.
Right.
And then you turn around and there was no big thing.
Right.
And today I'm blowing it up.
Everybody has a social instinct that we want to be loved by our fellow man. And going to somebody and bringing something up like this, we know could possibly be a threat to that. So it's human. I wanted to talk about one word here, and that is after we do this step, and I guess Jim is going to have to pick up with cheating and infidelity and the family next week because they kind of go together, the family problems. I want to turn to page 83 and talk about after we do this step, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, doing this 9th step, I looked up the word painstaking in the dictionary, and it said taking diligent care or effort. I looked up the word diligent, and it said steady, earnest, and energetic application and effort. So there's a lot in that word. It implies that we're going to be doing this for the rest of our lives. We have to be steady. We have to be earnest, honesty, and energetic. We got to do it. We have to put effort into this. So this is something that we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives. We do not shirk at anything, though. Keep that in mind. No matter how fearful it is, we must not shirk at anything. We have to be willing. And once again, at the bottom of 79, it says, or in the middle of the paragraph, it says, also send a small amount of money. Some of these are going to intertwine. Some of these, there's 5 parts, but some of the money is going to correlate with the persons we hate, and the family is going to correlate with the criminal. And so although they're separated at the same time, there's many little fibers to these steps, because we have really complicated our lives badly, so the repairs are going to be complicated. But the willingness to work on it for the rest of our lives, to make the amends in like to the harm that we've done, is crucial. Yes, Tom?
You read something earlier about the energy, or have the energy to go out and do.
Yeah.
Isn't that the same thing as a power? See, like my higher power is not God, but my higher power comes from God. And I ask God for the power to carry whatever I need to do out. So wouldn't that energy they talked about in the dictionary be the same thing as a power as in God? From God?
Right. The power, like in the 3rd step prayer, that the victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love.
And it's the same power we pray for in 11th step.
Yeah. It's God gives us the power, but we have to do the work. Okay? And we have to be willing, and we have to be painstaking. So, carry on with your 10th, 11th, and 12th step as you do this, and make this a lifetime commitment, and shirking from nothing, and the guilt will be removed through this step. Now, Jim's going to start, like I said, on the 4th part with the cheating and infidelity and the family, and he'll probably finish that up next week in the 9th step. So, does anybody have any more comments and questions?
I'm just starting out, really, again. So, this is very heavy for me.
I'll bet.
Now, but I still feel very good about it. I don't feel I'm near ready. But I'm still, on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd steps. But it's good. I've felt that it's good to hear good things, even if you're not ready for it. That somehow it sinks in, and then when you get to the 9th step or something, you have so much good information from all the people around that it comes when you need it. So I'm going to be here next week, even though I'm a little swamped by this.
Good, because Jim's going to be back next week. All the steps do go together, you're right. I think it's extremely important that no one partakes on the 9th step without the help of their sponsor until they're to the 9th step. But the 10th and 11th steps could be started from the very beginning, take an inventory, not making new damages. The 12th step, knowing that the reason we do all these steps is for the goal of one day helping others. Yeah. That has to be our primary purpose, has to be in the back of our mind, doing all the steps. Yeah. So you're right, even though you're not at that step yet, it's not harmful to hear it, because the primary purpose of doing all these steps so that we can be of maximum service to God and to others is our goal.
Well, I got a sponsor yesterday, and
Good. Do you have a big book?
Yes, I have one home.
Okay.
I had 34 years in the end. And I became, I go into meetings and everything really up until a couple of years ago. And
how long have you been out?
Just a short, I got addicted to painkillers. I was quite ill and in the hospital.